My name is Wendy Potomsky and I'm the managing partner and owner of Retake Furniture Rentals. Retake is once again a proud supporter of the Canadian Film Festival and is working to contribute to the Canadian film and TV industry by making it an easy and sustainable place to do business. Retake provides sustainable short and long-term furniture rental options to meet production schedules and product needs. Retake also understands the importance of set design and the dynamic nature of the film and TV industry, which is why we created a company to specifically support Canadian filmmakers. Retake can assist you in setting up your production office with sustainable alternatives to keep your team working safely as we all head back to work. We use sustainable approaches to minimize product going to landfill, which means any product supplied by Retake is helping to support the circular economy. Our in-house upholstery services can tailor our product to meet your set design requirements and match your color schemes. Contact us to discuss your office furniture needs. Our goal is to help you get back to work as safely and efficiently as possible. Stay safe, everyone, and enjoy the films and shorts at this year's Canadian Film Festival.
Celebrate Canadian filmmakers on Super Channel Fuse with an exclusive homegrown event.
I'm ready.
Go.
The Canadian Film Fest presented by Super Channel brings this year's festival into your home for a second year as a virtual experience.
Goodbye.
Every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night until April 18th. Enjoy the premieres of indie films and shorts from critically acclaimed and up-and-coming Canadian producers and directors.
And this is where the donkey starts talking.
Immerse yourself in this inspiring and spirited event, both on air and online, with live Facebook Q&A sessions that follow the films.
Makes sense. Start it.
Experience the Canadian Film Fest, proudly presented by Super Channel.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us and welcome to the Q&A for the Canadian Film Fest screening of Women in Car, preceded by the short film The Pond at Night. My name is Laura Good and I'm one of the programmers here at SIFF.
And I'm Mark Ishoria, and I'm also one of the programmers here.
And we do have the cast of Women in Car, including the director and cast members joining us, Vanya Rose, Aidan Ritchie, and Helene Joy, excuse me. But first, we're going to hear from our short filmmaker, Olivia Boudreau. Hi, Olivia. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. I might start off by asking you a little bit about the genesis of the inspiration for your film, The Pond at Night. What inspired it, and how did it come into being?
Well, it was three different desires. I wanted to film in a pond at night because I was very attracted by the sound and texture and colors of this kind of environment. And I wanted to film a very long monologue. And I wanted to work with two women, two sisters, and their relationship, their affinities. So it was like three different things that at some point just, I don't know, became the pond. And it was a very sudden, it was a very sudden mise en forme, like everything at some point just went easily, and I had this script.
That's great. The two performances from the characters are really what grounds the film. Can you tell us a little bit about how you found those actors and how they got involved with the project?
Evelyne de la Chenelière is a friend of mine. We're currently writing a feature movie together, and I wanted to work with her specifically. It was written for her. She's a very well-known actress here in Quebec and a playwright as well. And I felt like I wanted to, we don't cast her in this type of role normally, and I wanted to find this voice in her that I know that she has, because she has a very wide range. So I started with Evelyne, and then I was looking for her sister, and I did some casting, and it was very magical when Noémie came by, because they have the same delivery, the same sophisticated presence, energy, like soft and I don't know, and inhabited. So they were a great match.
Great.
I'd love to also ask you about the film's aesthetic sensibility. It's really rich from a formalist perspective, and it's got this beauty about it that really allows for reflection in the blurred lines between imagination and memory, particularly that ending, and the veil of darkness that's falling with twilight, and this lush cinematic space that the film operates within. How did you arrive at the film's visual sensibility, and what came first, sort of that vision, which you had kind of talked about a little bit as the sense of place in the conversation, or the actual subject matter? Because it does dovetail very much with that dark, complex, subdued vibe that you give visually.
Yeah, they were like two different tracks. Like the pond was amazingly visual, and I'm first and foremost, I'm a visual artist, so I'm like entering my project through visual aesthetic, colors and texture and soundscape, and the monologue was something else. But suddenly this beautiful environment, so peaceful, was perfect for this kind of dialogue with something so difficult to grasp and raw and violent. So I felt that the pound was the perfect place to have this conversation, because it was balancing it was a beautiful contrast, but also it was easier to follow it. Yeah, it was helping a little bit.
That's great. We have a question here from James about the locations. Can you talk about, locations are really a huge part of what adds to the atmosphere of the film, and especially that final shot is so amazing. Can you talk about where those locations are and how you found them?
It's in Abercorn. It's 1.5 hours south of Montreal, and the movie was written for another pond, but I couldn't shop there. And by, I don't know, this incredible chance, we had this family that have a cottage at Abercorn with a private pond, and it was amazing. It was amazing because you walk from the house like maybe 10 minutes, and then you're in the forest and it's their private pond. So it was a beautiful location. I mean, all the crew would feel like, I don't know, this beautiful summer days in a beautiful location, and it was yeah, amazing place.
Definitely. And I'm sure you were working with natural light from what we're seeing, unless you had the most sophisticated, incredible lighting team I've ever experienced.
Yeah, it's natural light. And I wanted to start the movie like at the end of the day, like just before the light comes down, and end it at the night. I wanted like the timeline of the movie to be this kind of déroulement. And so it was a very rush shooting, because we had only 2 days and we were always like pushed by the light. But yeah.
Wow.
Light.
That's impressive. And I also wanted to dig in a little bit to the film's thematics specifically. It's so rare to me as a female programmer. I'm very much inundated with representations of sexual assault, rape culture, and it's such an important conversation. But this, to me, felt like it was handled very differently and was very refreshing and unique in its perspective. And that it does absolutely lay bare rape culture and the complicity that allows it to continue. But it's also not in any way exploitative. And it just felt like it struck such a nuanced and complex note. And how did you go about that in on a script level and developing that from the page onto the screen. And how did you talk about those nuances with your cast and navigate that?
Mm. It was very, I mean, these are very important subject, and it was, and I wanted to address that, but it was in no way possible for me to show it. And I don't felt that it was a good way to bring people in these kind of question by showing it in their face. And also because it's violence against women or anyone, it's something that is most of the time very difficult to grasp. That is that is so many perspectives on one event, and the memory is something that is very evasive. And so it's, I mean, the nature of these events are so complex that I was looking for a way to talk about it with great distance, but still with precision, being very precise about it. So I developed this story, and I wanted it to feel that the spectator would have doubt about the woman herself telling the story and about the story, and even the character has doubt about what she heard and what she's seen. And when she has the question, does people see what I see or hear what I hear? I think it's very that's how we feel in front of power dynamics, and it's always difficult to point it in a very precise way. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I felt that was very self-reflexive in the film itself,
Mhm.
in those final moments where the camera sort of loses one of the sisters momentarily into the darkness, and you're sort of wondering if some of that monologue was real or imagined, or if these characters are still in this space.
Mhm.
And I just thought that was really beautifully executed as a way to close the film and to have us as viewers question our own experience and our own memory of what we've just seen on screen. Was that
Really
something that
awesome.
was,
Yeah.
was that something that was intentional for you?
Yeah. I mean, it's mostly the nature of my work. It's always to find the blur between like the psychic and the physical world, and the dream and the reality. And I'm very interested in perception, the way we perceive and interpret, and what contaminates it. And so it was a very I don't know, the Pound was a very amazing playground for that. It was permitting so many things.
Amazing. So I think we're just about out of time. We want to thank you again for sharing your film with us. It's really, an amazing piece of work.
Thank you so
And
much.
we're going to be right back with our feature filmmakers. So stick around for everyone tuning in, and thank you, Olivia. We'll see you around.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Olivia.
Good
Pleasure having
night.
you.
Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Canadian Film Fest Q&A. We are now returning with the cast and director of Women in Car. I'm going to start off by introducing Vanya Rose, the director, who's going to introduce her cast. Hi, Vanya.
Hi, how are you?
Well, thank you for being here. How are you?
Thank you, good, yes. I was just saying that I was watching the film just before, and so I'm all flustered. But anyway, and so joining us is Helene Joy, who plays Anne, and Aidan Ritchie, who plays Owen.
Hi, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
I might actually start the conversation with your casting of Aidan and Helene, because the performances are so absolutely remarkable and really ground this film. And it's such a showcase, I think, for these two actors. Could you speak a little bit about how you came to find them to embody the roles of Anne and Owen? And then maybe we could hear from Aidan and Helene as well, Helene, as to what that journey was like and what drew you to the roles.
So actually both of them, oddly enough, I literally saw a picture this big of each of them.
Okay.
And that's how I cast them, literally. It's embarrassing to say, but that's literally how it happened. I had no clue who Lane Joy was. And I saw this tiny picture. I was doing this project at CFC at the time for the film, very early on. It was, totally the very beginnings, and we had to do this little project, and the casting agent gave us this big book. And I looked for hours in this room by myself, and I saw this tiny little picture, and I said, I think that's her. I think that's her. And they were like, that's Helene Joy. And I was like, I'm from Quebec. I have no clue who this person is. And from there on, it just we met up, and it was perfect. It was love at first sight. What can I say? And then for Aidan, it was exactly the same thing. It was a few months before we shot the film, and I had been recommended all these kind of up and coming Canadian actors. But, no one was, how can I put it? Just no one was hot enough. I couldn't find anyone who really affected me, that I saw and I was affected in any way whatsoever. And so I actually hurt my back. This is going to be such a long story. I'm so embarrassed. I hurt my back, and I was in bed, and I said, okay, today I'm finding this actor. I don't care. And so I basically gave myself, the baby was sleeping, and I gave myself 4 hours to find him. And I was going through this website, and I basically got to R and landed on Aidan's picture, again, this big. And I said, I think that's him. And that was it. And then he sent me a little recording, and then I said, okay, he's perfect. And he'd done just a few things and barely had an agent, and was in Winnipeg in Snowland, and that's it. And that's how I cast them both.
Well, there is something to be said. I mean, it's a visual medium with form, and the emotional response triggered by an image. So it doesn't sound so crazy.
And I think photos, I think photos say a lot about, we can read people to a certain extent. And I think I could just, eyes say it all, I guess, in a way.
Helene, do you want to speak next as to what drew you to the role when you first read the scripts?
Sorry, the question is about the script or the casting or the whole thing?
Just what drew you to the role and however that came about.
Yeah, it's always, as an actor, it's always the writing that draws you to a role. When we first met, I hadn't seen it, I don't think even, or maybe I had. I can't remember exactly, but I just got a call, someone wants to meet you, and we met up and we talked about it. And I don't think I'd read much of it at that point, but
there was nothing written.
What's that?
There was nothing written. It was just a scene. It was about a scene or two, and it was totally different, but it was about a scene or two I had, I think.
Right. And we discussed it a lot, and the role sounds amazing, and it is amazing. It's an amazing role. Any actor get excited about a role that's so complicated and so emotional, and all of the things we love to do. And then we went ahead and did a short film in the meantime, and so that sort of solidified things. And then then it was really just about how do we get this film made, and that became the journey. But yeah, I think it's really funny about it was so long ago that I think you were looking through casting workbook used to do it with a book. That doesn't happen anymore, and that's what you would have seen it in.
Yeah.
That's really funny. And so So it happened to be right, but who knows why or how. And but yeah, in the end, the role and her journey, it's fun to sink your teeth into something just so, deep. And there's really, you don't have to limit how deep you can take it, whether the audience knows about what you're doing or not. It just had all the, it had the depth and breadth, if you will, to give you tons to play with, which is always fun.
And Aidan, can you talk a little bit about, how you came to it and what your reaction to reading about your character was?
I didn't know what to think of the whole thing, because Vanya just randomly, like, I was in between agents, so she randomly messaged me like on Facebook, and was like, I want you to audition for this movie, and I was like, all right, sure, why not? And then when she said, yeah, we want you to be in this, I didn't know what to think, but part of me was like, this can't be real. Like, I'm from Winnipeg. Yeah. How did they hear about me? But I read the script, and it just really, really, really made me hungry to tell this story. It's a really amazing script, I think, that Vanya wrote. That, as Elaine said, any actor is just gonna bite right into it, because there's so much layers to what's going on in the narrative, and as some of you may know, Vanya loosely based it on The Reef, which in my opinion means that it's got to be good if it's based on a novel from that era, so I just was so hungry to tell. Plus I was playing a musician, playing a piano player. I'm not a piano player, but I did learn a little bit for this role, and I do have a lot of music in my blood, so it really turned me on, and then meeting the cast like Helene and Leanne and Gabrielle and Anthony just made me more excited, because everybody was just wanting to tell this story, in every way that we can, really dig into the characters, dig into the situations, the themes, the romance. It is true. Elaine's right. It's any actor's dream to be in a movie like this.
Yeah. What I like about it so much is the dramatic layout of it is so great, and the tension between what Owen is demanding and what Charlotte is demanding, and sort of the fact that Charlotte knows about their secret, but there's also a theme there of keeping up appearances and the image of the family and stuff like that. So Vanya, I would love for you to talk a little bit about, Owen mentioned The Reef. Aidan mentioned The Reef. Talk a little bit about how much you took from that, but also what your writing process was like over the course of putting the script together.
So originally it was actually quite close to the novel. It was actually a period film. It was, and it was quite close. Like it was supposed to be an adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
And then as time went by, I just kind of got further and further away from it. It became contemporary. I mean, that obviously changed a lot, but I mean, basically all that's really left are these names, I guess. And most of all, what interested me was Edith Wharton, who had, grown up and remained in the very haute bourgeoisie of New York City. And she continuously wrote about it, if it be, Age of Innocence, which Scorsese adapted. And she continuously questioned it in all of her works. She's just a brilliant author. And The Reef is if anyone, it's a brilliant novel to read, because it's so contemporary, also it's about an affair that someone has, but it's totally different. I mean, the stepson is a stepson. There's no piano, there's no archery, there's none of this. This all came after the fact. But there are these characters, and there's this kind of setting, which interested me, because I just felt like in Montreal we have this Westmount, which is a neighborhood where before the Silent Revolution here, we had Like the 6 banks of Canada were here. It was a very wealthy, we were the center of Canada basically. And then when that happened, it all moved to Toronto. Everyone just fled and went to Toronto. But at that one point, Montreal was kind of the center of all the money of Canada. And so we have this kind of historical kind of setting in Montreal where, money, used to be and still is, and these huge houses from the turn of the century, these massive houses. And so it was an area that I wanted to explore, and having read the book, and it just kind of got all, I put the pieces together, and then just went off on my own with my own imagination. And the stepson obviously became something very different than what he is in the book. And yeah. But it was definitely the beginning. Yeah.
And just to expand on that, what do you think it was that was the core that spoke to you with all of these sort of more superficial aspects aside, like time period and sense of place, which isn't necessarily superficial, but which was changed. And then what was it that held your interest and made you feel, I have to tell this story? Was it the relationship between the two characters, the complexity of the characters themselves? Or just the thematic?
There was no relationships as in the film. Like the relationships are totally different. What interested me was the main thing was actually what the title is, which is The Reef. And if you notice in the film, we built a lot of water into the film. If you have like your headset on, or if you're in a theater, which one day hopefully it will be, but there's a lot of water in there. And there was, there's this idea in the novel, which is this thing that an experience that you have, or someone that you spend time with, and that you just can't get over. And so Edith Wharton used this metaphor of the reef, which was this idea of this block, like a ship trying to pass a reef and can't get past that reef. So similarly, as humans, we get ourselves into situations, if it be with a person or a situation, and we just can't get over them. And so I think that idea really stuck with me, this idea of that we do have those reefs in our lives, that we have these situations or people that we just can't get over, no matter how hard we try. So that, and then the other thing that of course stuck for me was the two women, which even though, Owen and Anne's relationship is so, central to the story, for me, what I really thought was even more important was the two women's relationship, that, we can have these relationships with men as women, as, heterosexual women. We can have relationships with men, but at the end of the day, these relationships that we have with each other, women with each other, what happens to those in certain situations, and how those sometimes maybe need to be worked on, more than just that other relationship. Friendships, sometimes need to be more important than those things. And so there's this, they're trying, Sophie and Anne, there's this rapprochement that tries to occur that kind of fails, but at least there's an attempt there to kind of find something, some kind of compassion between each other, some kind of understanding to each other's experience.
We have a question here from Melissa asking about the car wash sequence. Can you talk a little bit about where that came from? And Helene, also, maybe you can talk about what was that like to film for you?
Do you want to go first?
Well, yeah, you tell the fun stuff. I'll tell the more. So the car wash scene was always, for me, it was always there. From the minute I kind of built in the car into the theme and kind of, the symbolism of the car, I said, I've never seen a car wash scene where the window opens. And I found one finally, but it wasn't done the way I would have, the way we did it but it hadn't been done yet. And I always have, that's part of my little filmmaker side, which is everyone filmmaker has, which is trying to shoot something that's never been shot and do it the way you want to do it. So, so it's always been there. And the crew put me through hell, the crew put me through, hell. Like, you're going to ruin the camera. How are we going to get insurance? They wanted me to film them telling, explaining. They wanted me to literally film them. They wanted me to film them saying that it wasn't their fault that the camera's ruined, in case when the camera got ruined, to make sure, I went through hell. You know, I mean, everyone's my witness now. Hell they put me through. Crew, stick by your directors. Jesus. So yeah, so I went through hell, and thank God for Helene's chutzpah, because Helene was like, "We're going to do this, and we're going to use my car."
Up to when we were going to do it, they kept saying we couldn't do it. I'm like, we're not going to not do it. We have to do it. So what we did prior to doing it, we went to this place to drove through on our own.
We did our own car wash. We used Helene's own personal car.
In my car. And I was like, oh, how wet can it really get? And we got plastic bags and put it all over ourselves and all over everything. We just put garbage bags in the whole car. And then we did it, and we were like, it's not that bad. Like, it's not bad. You know, but we did it once without, and we're like, this is not so bad, right? And then the day, I think even on the day they were trying to not do it.
Oh yeah.
Really problematic, and everyone was very upset.
They had plexiglass, and like, you know, they had like, you know these guys, these crew guys. They're like, okay, we're gonna get out the light.
And in the end, and didn't we end up using my car?
We did use your car, of course. Yeah, we used your car again. Yeah, we shot it in your car.
Yes,
inside. And if you look closely, the interior of the car is a different interior, because the shot I ended up taking, because we did the car wash scene 3 times. We shot twice inside and then once through the window.
Right.
And so at one point we had it covered to look like the real car, but then through the car wash scene, the kind of plastic tape started like flapping off. And so I actually have that shot. Like there's like this, she's like all into the seat, and there's like it's right behind her, and I'm like, fuck. So we couldn't use that shot. But
my car, because they literally wouldn't let us use the car, and it was just like, we're gonna do it anyway. And I thought, my memory is we only did it twice on the day. My hair got too wet. We had to, you know, the second time.
Yeah, I went back and did it a third time through the window.
I see, yes. And so we did it twice. Once with my hair perfect, and the next one not so much, but you know, somewhere between those. We got the whole thing. It was crazy, but it was.
And we had to buy the tickets. The funniest thing was me going to buy the tickets, because we weren't even allowed to like park. Like all of the trucks couldn't park, and we got into so much trouble because we had parked our trucks in the gas station, and so then everyone had to leave the gas station, and so I had to run back, buy the tickets. I was like, "Can I have 3 car wash tickets, please?" They were like.
Yeah, they were onto it by the end, and we had to get out of there. But when we were done, we needed to leave, and they weren't.
Yeah. So we just kept going around like, hi.
So yeah, it was crazy.
Speaking of the car wash scene, it's got such rich, layered, textured sound design. We actually have a question from our audience member, Joy, about how you approach the sound design to this film, because it is really quite innovative throughout. And what was that like navigating on your part, Vanya, as the director, psychological realism, which extends, just to expand on the question, from the script into the form of the film?
Yeah, I mean, oddly enough, we were working like right at the beginning of COVID. We were kind of in that whole COVID zone for sound. So it was quite something. But we were like going to record sounds at the gym, and we were like, should we wear a mask? Like it was just the beginning. We were like, people are wearing masks, I hear. People are cleaning their hands, I hear. So we were, it was like that kind of moment. So we were going into the gym like, should we clean? Like it was like right at that turning point. But Andreas and I, we did a lot of, actually Jackie, one of the editors, is also a sound editor. And so early on, in the editing room, Jackie, we were trying to get the cut done, and Jackie would just spend she's a brilliant filmmaker in her own right, and Jackie knows. She does these experimental documentaries. Her films are beautiful. She has one coming out soon. I can't wait. And she would just be in the editing room, and she'd spend all this time on the sound, and I'd be like, hey, but we gotta get to the image, because we had like, our deadline. And so she was already starting to create something based on things we had talked about. And so that just kind of carried through with Andreas, and she and Andreas had worked together. Andreas is the sound designer. They had worked together already. So they kind of, could just kind of do their thing in a way. Like early on, they kind of knew their sensibilities together. It worked really, really well. And so we just kept pushing, like, the water theme that I really wanted in there. I wanted the sound to just really be able to enter into Anne's headspace at times, like at the dinner scene with the opera. And you know, there's just moments where, yeah, I just wanted the sound to take precedence over image almost. And then of course, Das Owls, who composed like a beautiful, beautiful score and soundtrack. And so kind of just, you know, working with them to build around that. So it's just, you know, the creative process is a crazy kind of unconscious process because you're just kind of creating, and, you know, you can't really say how these things occur really. It's just, you just go with your heart and your instincts.
And it's certainly, the sound is complemented by a very intimate shooting style throughout as well. And, you know, the shallow depth of field and the tighter framing and the nuance of that. So even though you do let the sound shine, it very much is an aesthetically gorgeous film, and just every composition is really powerful. So I'm a bit of a formalist myself, so I'm always really interested in that conversation of content and form coming together.
We have a question here from John for the actors. Can you guys talk a little bit about, I mean, it's a film with a lot of challenging and heavy scenes. Can you each talk about maybe what the most challenging scene for you guys was? And maybe we can start with Aidan.
Oh, okay. The most challenging scene, that's oh man, that's a crazy question.
There's a lot.
Yeah, like there's so many layers to, like, the first scenes with Owen and Helene. There's all these undertones. You don't want to just give it to the audience, you know, and neither would Owen want to just reveal his true feelings, you know, in front of his girlfriend or partner at the time, right? So you know what it was the first day. I'd say the first day was the most challenging because there were some pretty intense, important scenes that just laid the foundation between those two characters. And it was the first day for was it just me or was it both of us? I can't remember, but it was the first for the both of us. And so that first day of all of the cottage scenes, that was heavy. It was very heavy, you know, because we had to jump like right into those moments that just put that foundation down for the whole story, right? So I felt like it was that day, every scene in that first day was a lot of work, but I mean, challenging, but like really fucking, pardon me, really, really awesome. Like, really fun. You know, it was challenging, but it was good.
And Helene, for you?
I find, yeah, challenging is an interesting question. You get asked as an actor, like, what was the hardest part? And the hilarious thing is often what people perceive as the hardest thing, like, oh, the most emotional scene, that, you know, those things are not the hardest part. The hardest part will be something else, like, you know, something very technically difficult, which isn't as sexy sounding, you know, but that's often the case. The most challenging probably moment there was for me at times was emotions. I remember when we were shooting the scene where I dropped off my daughter. So it was, you know, and it was toward the end, I think toward the end of shooting too. And so we've been shooting all of this very emotional stuff, and you do get, you know, you know, triggered by a lot of stuff that you're shooting. I'm not always conscious of it as I'm shooting. And then when we shot that, the direction was that it wasn't highly, visually emotional. I wasn't sobbing. I wasn't, you know, that's not
when you give your daughter over in the end, right?
Yeah. You know, the choice was made that it wasn't highly emotional. I wasn't in a highly emotional state giving her up. And so we had to shoot it over and over. And the problem is that I was in a highly emotional state. So that for me as an actor, I'm getting into the truth of that moment. Of course, that's a highly emotional state, but she wasn't showing it. And so it's just a horribly pent up moment that I had to kind of work through. I remember like being a total wreck and having to sob for some time. Like I've never had that experience. So that was highly challenging, but none of it was on screen. It was just very challenging to physically do as a human. Like it just really messed me up. So there's that. But other than that, like, you know, challenging was it, you know, really so much was challenging just purely because we were doing it so fast and because so very intense, you know, on and off intense.
Yeah.
So there was a lot that was challenging. The scenes that I had with Charlotte screaming on the bed and, you know, sort of felt a little bit like mental breaks, whereas it was very challenging as an actor. It was like,
you know, I still, watching the film just before this, I still don't know how. I mean, Helene basically was like shooting every single day. Like she was on set every day. And every day was like basically being like just nervous wreck. Like, you know, and she had her days off and she was just like, ugh. And then she'd kind of come back and she'd be like, okay.
Yeah.
It was amazing, you know, Helene, like that she held, and she was, you know, Helene held it, man, like until the very end. Helene was in there, and every day she came in just like, here we go again, nervous wreck, you know, and you never talked about it, and you never, you know, and I think because you didn't talk about it, that's the power on the screen, because you just kind of, you were surviving as an actor, and like Anne, you know.
yeah.
And I think that's where the power of performance comes from, is that you were both survival mode.
You channeled it into the work.
Yeah, because it was such a short period of time, you know, we only had 92 days of shooting, you know, so.
Wow.
Yeah.
Speaking of time, we are approaching being out of time on our end, but I'd love to just wrap up with asking you each if you could just speak a little bit to what is next for either the film or yourselves, and where we can follow any upcoming projects.
Well, I can't speak to what's next with the film. Hopefully the film goes on to, you know, when we're not in lockdown for the rest of our lives, maybe the film we'll get to see it on a big screen again or something like that. That'd be awesome. But I'm super busy, which is crazy considering everything, but I'm once again going into production for Murdoch, although that's not official and I don't know when it's happening, but yes, so I'll be kind of busy with that again, which is a blessing just to be busy. But other than that, I'm trying to hustle my own projects, but everything's been very difficult in this time. That's all I can say. It's like nothing moves very fast, but it's moving.
And Aidan?
With the movie, same. I mean, hopefully, you know, it keeps on moving, builds more of an audience, or creates a, you know, a spark or a wave kind of thing. You know, maybe get some awards because you two deserve them, I think. You know, that's what I would love to see with the movie. As for myself, I mean, I've got a few different things that I'm attached to that, you know, the current state of the world has kind of made it complicated. So it's kind of a waiting game, but you can, you know, just, you know, look on my Facebook or my YouTube, or even Google my name actually, and then it should show up if those projects you know, end up happening, you know, despite the craziness that it is for many of us in the world.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And Vanya, what's next for the film, and what's next for you?
Well, for the film, we're just waiting to hear back from, you know, festivals, and you know, hopefully we'll be releasing it in the fall, hopefully in theaters, hopefully. And I'm just working on a new script right now, so I'm just submitting for grants right now, which is fun, and finishing my tax credit applications for this year. So that keeps me busy. So yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I wish we had more time. We did have some audience questions that we didn't get to, but it was so great to hear from all of you. Thank you so much. I also want to thank our audiences at home for watching, and remind you that the Canadian Film Fest is on until April 18th. There are lots more terrific films and industry programming events happening over the coming weeks. So please keep an eye on the Canadian Film Fest Facebook page and website, which is www.canfilmfest.ca, for more great films and events. And thank you so much again for joining us, and thanks to the film team.
Bye.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.